في حاجتين مميزين في الحلقه دي النهارده. اول حاجه وجود ضيفي النهارده المحامي بيتر سعد. وده اول مره يشرفني واول مره يبقى موجود كتير على شاشات التلفزيون في السوشيال ميديا. الحاجه الثانيه هو الموضوع اللي هنتكلم فيه النهارده مع بيتر، وهو ازاي تختار فرانشايز بزنس، وايه مميزات وعيوب الفرانشايز، مش بس من ناحيه البزنس لكن كمان من الناحيه القانونيه. عشان تفتح فرانشايز بزنس يبان هو انه it can be a lower risk way to start a business, a small business. بس ما ينفعش تبقى one size fits all، يعني it's not for everyone. ممكن تلاقي انه الفرانشايز كومباني اللي انت بتشتغل فيها او هتشتغل معاها ليها rules وليها terms of regulations ولايسنس agreements معينه ممكن تناسبك انت كفرانشيزي او ما تناسبكش. لو انت من الشخصيات الانتربرنور وبتحب تعمل كل حاجه independently وعايز to have your own business او small business to start up، يمكن يكون افضل لك انك تعمل independent business. يبان ان الريسك عالي في الاندبندنت بزنس والريسك بتاع الفرانشايز بزنس اقل او المخاطره اقل، لانه الفرانشايز اخذ الريسك ده قبل كده مرات ومرات ومرات قبليك، ف you might find it's easier and فيها benefits اكتر ليك. تعالوا ببساطه كده نتكلم عن البروز اند كونز of having a franchise business. تعالوا نفتح مع بعض صفحه ونشوف ايه مميزات ان انت يبقى بتبتدي you start up your own business او your small business within a franchise module، او ان انت تشتغل independent. طيب ايه مميزات ان انت يبقى عندك فرانشايز بزنس؟ لو المخرج حط لنا البروز اند كونز، ناخد الاول البروز، ناخد الايه المميزات بتاعه الفرانشايز. اول حاجه it's already made business plan. ساعات كتير قوي ناس بتستراجل انها تعمل سمول بزنس وتبقى عامله بزنس بلان. وللناس اللي ما تعرفش تفاصيل البزنس بلان، انت بتحط كل الاوبجكتيفز اللي انت عايز توصل لها، الاستراتيجيز اللي انت عايز توصل لها، وبعدين تبتدي تبني التاكتكس ليها وتحط كل الفاينانشال اليمنتس بتاعت البيزنس والبوزيشننج بتاعك في عينين الكاستمر بتاعك. كل ده بيتحط في صوره بزنس بلان مدروسه من A to Z، من اول ما تفتح باب البيزنس بتاعك لحد ما تخلص اخر اليوم والسنه وهكذا. ده البيزنس بلان ده بيتقدم لك جاهز وستادد وتستد، والفرانشايز بيبقى او الفرانشيزور بيبقى اوريدي تستد وعامل كل الابديتس للبيزنس بلان. وخلي بالك ان دي تاني ميزه في الفرانشايز بيزنس، انه البيزنس بلان ده اللي بيطمن اللندر اللي هيديك الفلوس وتستارت يور بيزنس. فلما بيشوف الفرانشايز وبيشوف انه شاف قبل كده الفرانشايز بيزنس ده، البيزنس بلان دي شافها قبل كده مع ديفرنت فرانشيزيز قبل كده، او ناس فكرت انها تاخد الفرانشايز قبليك، فبيقدر اللندر يكون عنده صوره كامله عن البيزنس وتوقعاته، وشاف نجاحاته وشاف توقعات فشله، فبيديك فرصه اكتر انه يديك اللندنج ماني بتاعته. ودايما الفرانشايز بزنس بيبقى عنده السيت اب جاهز، يعني بيديك البيزنس بلان وبيديك كمان الطرق اللي تقدر توصل بيه لللندرز بتوعه. هو بيكون عمل الاكسرسايز ده ووصل لللندرز دول. طبعا الريسك بتاع كل ده بيبقى اقل من ان انت تستارت فروم سكراتش اندبندنتلي وتبتدي البيزنس بتاعك. سهل قوي ان انت تاخد ادفايس من زمايل ليك دخلوا البيزنس ده قبل كده، بتعرف هم وصلوا لغايه فين وتقدر انت كمان تكمل بعدهم. فدي واحده من ضمن المميزات اللي احنا قلناها. فاحنا قلنا بسرعه كده 4 مميزات للبيزنس دول. زي ما اتفقنا، تقدر تعمل بيزنس بلان، تقدر تاخد الفاينانس، تقدر تكلم حد قبل كده مر بالتجربه بتاعه الفرانشايز ده ويقدر يفيدك فيها. طب ايه بقى زي ما بيقولوا الكونز، ايه العيوب بتاعه الفرانشايز بزنس، عشان ناخد الصوره كامله ببالانس واضح. الفرانشايز زي ما هو ليه مميزات، الستارت اب كوست بتاعته بتبقى حمل عليك وانت بتبتدي. انت راجل بتبتدي بسكراتش بزنس، وبتدفع كوست للفرانشيزيز او فرانشيزور سوري ليك، بتدفع له مصاريف الفرانشايز. انت بتشتري البراند بتاعه، بتشتري اسمه، وبتأجره في مكانك انت الخاص بيك. فده ليه ستارت اب كوست، غير بقى ان انت بتدفع الرنت والموظفين والويجز دي كلها. انت كمان بتدفع كوست للفرانشايز ده. You can كمان have less flexibility with the franchise. يعني انت ما عندكش لو انت انتربرينور بتبقى دي ليميتنج ليك، ما تقدرش تاخد اي قرار بشكل احادي. لازم تبقى consult your franchise business والكومباني اللي انت واخد منها البراند، وليك ليميتيشنز معينه. في ناس بيبقى فليكسبل وفي ناس ما بتبقاش فليكسبل بشكل ما. كمان الفيز، انت مش بس بتدفع الستارت اب كوست، انت بتدفع حاجه كل راننج كوست كل شويه. في رويالتي فيز، في نسبه ل 5%، 6%، 7%. في ماركتنج فيز، هم بيعمل لك اعلانات في الشوارع، في التلفزيون، في الجرايد، في اليوم السادس، في اي حته بيدفع هو كفرانشايز او كفرانشيزور بيدفع هو الكوست دي. فانت بتدفع 1% 2% ماركتنج فيز على الماركتنج كامبينز اللي هو بيدفعها لك. ولو انت هتعمل ماركتنج كامبينز ليك انت للستور بتاعك او للبيزنس بتاعك انت الخاص بيك، ده كمان انت بتدفعه اون توب اوف. اصعب حاجه في الموضوع كله هي الاكزيت بلان. دايما احنا يعني انا لما بيجي لي حد بيقول لي مجدي انا عايز اعمل بيزنس او عايز اشتري بيزنس، قول لي اعمل ايه؟ اقول له قبل ما تفكر في البيزنس وانت داخل، فكر لو انت قررت تخرج هتخرج ازاي. الاكزيت بلان صعب جدا في الفرانشايز بزنس، لانه يعني في تفاصيل كتيره، وده اللي هنتناقش فيه مع المحامي بيتر سعد. الاكزيت بلان قد ايه بيبقى فيه ليميتيشنز عاليه جدا. مش كل الناس بتقرا كويس قبل او بتفهم كويس ايه الفكره في الموضوع ده. عشان كده انا بحاول اسهل لك الطريق. لو انت بتفكر في فرانشايز بزنس او اوريدي عندك فرانشايز بزنس، عايز تعرف ايه اللي ليك وايه اللي عليك، الابروتش لازم تسبند تايم وماني وافورت مع حد كونسلتنت لوير مثلا، يديك كل الاكسبيرينس بتاعته في الحته دي. فخلينا ناخد فرصه النهارده، بديكم فرصه ذهبيه ان احنا نتكلم دايركتلي مع بيتر سعد. في رقم تليفون على الشاشه 289-274-8011. لو عندك اي استفسار عن الفرانشايز بزنس يا ريت تشاركنا بيه، او تحط الكومنتس على الشاشه، واحنا هنحاول على قد ما نقدر نجاوب على الاسئله بتاعتك سواء في الحلقه دي او في حلقات ان شاء الله قادمه. خلوني احاول ارحب بضيفي النهارده المحامي بيتر سعد. لو كان موجود معانا على الهواء نعدل بس الكاميرا. بيتر، المحامي بيتر سعد، اهلا بيك يا بيتر. اهلا وسهلا.
Hi, hi Maggie. How are you,
Hi,
Maggie?
hi, how are you? Peter,
Good, good.
first we would like to thank you for your time today
Sure.
and joining اليوم السادس. I know that you are very busy and you have a very tight schedule, but I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Maggie. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Secondly, I know that we discussed just before we welcoming you the pros and cons of franchise business. From the business perspective اتكلمنا عن البيزنس بلان، اتكلمنا عن ان في فاينانشال موديول بيركب مع النيدز بتاعت الاونرز، فبيبقى كل السيت اب جاهز سهل قوي. واتكلمنا عن التشالنجز والكونز اللي ممكن تواجه الفرانشيزيز لما بيبتدوا فرانشايز بزنس. How do you see the pros and cons from the angle of legal angle, like let's say from your
Sure,
from you
sure.
as a lawyer?
So I'm gonna speak both English and Arabic, بس لو العربي مكسر forgive me.
احنا معاك عربي انجليزي كله حلو.
Okay. Um, like you said, Magdi, في الأول, الفرانشايزور, it's a system. يعني what are you getting from a franchise? When you go get a franchise, what are you getting? You're getting a brand name, you're getting a process, you're getting support, you're getting operational expertise, but you're also giving up control. You're paying both a fee to buy the franchise وبعدين a royalty based on percentage of sales. You have other expenses like a national marketing campaign or a regional marketing campaign. Well, what sometimes you also see in the supplies that you use, even the supplies you're using, you don't have a say in it. فبيكون even the supplies can be a little more expensive. Now, those are the pros and cons, and they play out in the legal process. But before you go into like the different franchises and what do you see in each, the baseline question in when you come to buy a franchise, they all give you حاجة اسمها disclosure statement. The disclosure statement diet will not change. And sometimes people make a mistake in Humma. They take the disclosure statement to a lawyer where they spend a lot of money to go through the process with a lawyer. With lawyer, you give them a very comprehensive request for changes. The reality is the franchisor never changes the disclosure package. But that's one thing to keep in mind as you're going through the process. Well, as you know, Magdi, disclosure statement is really the rules or the roadmap of the relationship between the franchisor with franchisee. ومكتوبة in a way solely to benefit the franchisor.
أكيد.
To be very clear.
Yeah.
The franchisor holds the power and the balance. وهم, so then you come back and say, why does anyone enter into a franchise? You enter into a franchise عشان السيستم بتاعتهم شغالة وناجحة. وفي ناس أخذوا السيستم, they followed it and made a very good sort of return on investment. وحاجة to keep in mind for the disclosure statement is it doesn't matter what it says today. Because في كلهم في section بتدي الفرانشايزور the ability to make any changes they need to change. But when a lawyer is reviewing this and marking it up with telling you this section is bad and this section is good, at the end of the day, بتوصل مرحلة where it doesn't matter what it says today because it can change tomorrow. So I always say, when you look at this, do you believe in the system? Have you done your research on the industry? Have you spoken to franchisees in the system and in the network? And what has their experience been?
Yeah, that's a very important point. بيتر، انا قلت لك ان الليجل ادفايس از كي. يعني احنا اتكلمنا قبل كده قلنا انه it's very important, it's crucial, it's very essential to get the advice from your legal angle and get the all the insights, not only about the disclosure statement or disclosure agreement, but also consider all the elements قبل ما to buy the franchise business. ساعات ساعات لما بتروح تكلم الفرانشايزيز اللي هم اشتروا الفرانشايز دي قبليك، وبيبقى ريكومندد من الفرانشايز اونر او الفرانشايزور، ساعات بيبقى رايهم بايس وما بتبقاش انت قادر تقرر is it true or it is bias. What do you think?
For sure.
Yeah.
الفرانشايزور عمره ما يحط حد مش ناجح قدامك. But nothing stops you from picking up the phone and calling any franchisee that you're interested.
Correct.
You find the location and go visit them.
Right. So your point is you have to do your due diligence.
Of course.
Right.
There is nothing automatic about these systems. في ناس take a franchise system and make very good return, وفي ناس lose money. Well, extremes. يعني في franchises في نفس السيستم. When I say a system, I mean a chain. Whatever if like you said, car detailing, a pet, food and hospitality. The common logo تحتيها هتلاقي ناس profitable وناس losing. So there's nothing automatic about it.
So do you think that as if I am a new buyer to the franchise, as a new franchisee, do I have the right to go and check, let's say, the books of other franchisees? I'm allowed to do that legally?
No, so you're not going to get into the books because there's confidentiality and there's things like that.
Right.
But when you go ask and say, how has your experience been? Or walk in the middle of the day. Sometimes Megdi, just walking in, let's say it's a food chain, and you walk in at lunch, and if it's empty at lunch and you go back at dinner and it's empty, then it kind of tells you what's going on. And empty today doesn't mean people in the store. It means activity behind the counter, because they could be preparing Uber Eats or DoorDash or whatever it is.
Right.
But you have to have the business sense to understand it. Another thing too, Megdi, is are you an early franchise, or is the system well established?
Yeah, that's very important point. Yeah.
It makes a huge difference, because early on it's more expensive to create awareness للbrand اللي انت you're subscribing to. بس لو انت دخلت and there's 100 franchises in whatever region, الماركتينج spend مش لازم يبقى as much. But there's more people contributing to the overall operating budget of these things.
طيب خليني ارجع للديسكلوجر ستيتمنت او ديسكلوجر اجريمنت اللي انت اشرت اليها. It aligns everything you can and you can do things in the business. How do you think the franchisee can change those agreement or disclosure? يعني انت اشرت انه even if you make some changes today, it might be changing tomorrow. So
franchisors don't change the disclosure. عشان آخر حاجة مش عايزين every location to have different terms. فهو one of it, to be a franchise system لازم يكون consistency.
Okay.
فديت مش موضوع negotiation. You're going in and it's up to you to accept the system or not.
So kind of take it or leave it in a way.
For sure. وبعدين بس part of it also is this, يعني you and I, when we were discussing this, you raised a good point. موضوع, it's not just about buying it. Is the market to exit? We always are guided in law by the idea of hope for the best, plan for the worst. That's the premise. And you can ask the franchisor, how much have the units sold for? What did the people buy it for? وبعدين الفranchise system, confident in their numbers, have no problem sharing the information. But that's part of the confidence of the process كمان. إن أنت لو مش بتخبي حاجة, you'll say it very openly. You'll be proud. The franchisor wants to say every franchise unit اللي اشتراها $50,000 is now worth $450,000. That makes the unit, that makes the whole franchise more attractive.
Yeah.
But if they don't want to give you the information, you have to ask why.
يعني زي ما انت حضرتك قلت كده, مثلا النهارده لو انا النهارده ببني مكان, I have, let's say, 1,200 square feet. It will cost me, let's say, $80-$70 per square feet to put all the carpets or whatever, the flooring and painting and everything. When it comes to franchise, he wants to put the best branding that he wants, and instead of you pay $150K for the startup, you will end up paying, let's say, $250. Let's say you pay 100 extra more on top of what you are planning to, and he, at the franchise, provides you with all the financing elements and everything. But by it end up that you are going to pay extra. Is this correct?
You can for sure, بس هو definitely back to the point of consistency. They want to control the process or control the consistency.
Yeah.
Where the franchisor, you know, makes money along the way. You know,
Yeah.
if they get the savings, not the franchisee, and that's part of being the franchisor.
Yeah.
But so one thing I would say though, in the startups are harder. Yani, زي any business, and you deal in the like in this universe, it's much easier to buy an existing business because fee history with fee track record than it is to start from scratch. Well, the reason I say that is this: when you're buying when you're buying an existing business, you're buying history. Well, history is not necessarily indicative of the future, بس بيدي some visibility to the likelihood of future performance. For the cash flow with cash management, يعني انت النهارده you can buy a unit, let's say, for $100,000, a business or of whatever sort. عشان البزنس ده يstart we cover its expenses and then it makes more money, you need to be at the point where you need extra cash flow في الأول to carry the operations. Now, لو انت رحت and you bought something for, let's say, 300,000 or 400,000, well, the franchise is making money, well, that helps pay off the loan. But there's pros and cons to everything. بس هو مش موضوع بس and then I have to pay to start it up. I need to have the cash reserves عشان to carry the operation as it grows and increases.
اوكي. طيب خلينا ناخد كده وان ستيب عشان خاطر انا في اسئله عماله تيجي كتير. What are the key
Sure.
points you first consider؟ تعالى بقى كده، انا النهارده جاي لك وعندي بزنس جديد وفي فرانشايز I am considering، وبقول لك ادي ادي الديسكلوجر اجريمنت اللي هم بعتوها لي، وادي الماركتنج بلان، وادي البيزنس بلان. What are the key points you first consider to evaluate those agreements, and should I go or not to go from not the business angle, I know, from your legal angle, like what you
Sure.
should consider first?
So one of the biggest things, Yani, the biggest secret in franchising is who holds the lease.
Yeah.
Does the franchisor hold the lease and sublease it to you? Or are you able to hold the lease directly to have leverage over the franchisor?
That's very tricky. There are actually
Very,
yeah.
absolutely. But that's a question. But then, Magdi, I think the important thing is legal and business blur. Yani, the legal and business diligence are one. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. You can't look at one franchise in one industry and say this is the one. Every industry, there's 2 and 3 and 4 franchises under the same sort of competition. You have to look at all of them. And you have to see what are the pros and cons to each of them and why. If one of them is charging you 2%, let's say, as a royalty fee, and one is charging 7%, why? There's reasons behind all of this. Legally, to be honest, like what a lawyer can really help you do is they can run searches. They can run searches and see لو الفranchisor has been in litigation. Have franchise holders sued the franchisor? Has there been any sort of historical conflict? عشان litigation, like the lawsuits really give a foundation to understand where some of the franchisees felt the pain. But generally speaking, Yani, my philosophy on franchising is I have more general discussions because the disclosure package could be 150 pages. At the end of the day, like I said, the one section that says, notwithstanding anything said in the 149 pages ahead, the franchisor can change the system in any way it wants at any point.
لا بيتر، انا مش هسيبك هنا بقى، استناني بقى حته
Sure,
حته.
sure.
النقطه الاولانيه دي it's very important. يعني the first point is who actually carry the lease agreement. احنا اللي انا اعرفه في البيزنس ده 3 انواع تقريبا، يعني more or less. يا اما انا الاونر او الفرانشيزور هو اللي يون ويليز سب ليز للنيو بزنس اونر اللي هو الفرانشيزي، يا اما العكس، الفرانشيزي هو اللي بيبقى مسؤوليه قانونيه كامله عن الليز and his name is on it. Or sometimes both of them they are on the name، يعني يبقى فلان and فلان، franchisor and franchisee on both are on the same terms و liabilities بالنسبه لللاندلورد اللي هم واخدين منه مثلا الستور في البلازا دي. which is which اني احسن؟ انا عارف ان مفيش بروز اند كونز في كل رول، بس ايه
Sure.
البنفيتس اكتر للفرانشيزي في اني واحده فيهم وليه and why؟
هو so the thing is انت you don't always have the option بس you can create the option. وأقول لك ازاي. If you're waiting للفرانشايزور you find you the perfect location, we do all the work for you, we get you set up, they're going to control that unit forever. If you go work with a broker and say, I want to find a lease, an area to lease in a high density area, these are the characteristics, where you find a location you really believe in, where you call the franchisor and say, I have a lease for a location that's very high traffic, high visibility, I want your units. Well, the franchisor is going to be like, okay, well, I want the business, and if you have the lease, fine, have the lease, right? Why is the lease so important? انت النهارده داخل on friendly terms. You're there for, let's say, 5 years or 10 years or whatever the number. You reach a point عايز to renew the lease. لو الفرانشايزور ماسك الليس and doesn't renew the location هيحصل ايه؟ خلاص, you lost the lease.
Right.
And these things don't happen in the short period, they happen in the longer period. But it depends on the person. يعني if you're entrepreneurial, well, you're going to do the work and you're going to create a good opportunity, you can marry that مع location والsystem والfranchisor, and they'll be supportive behind you because you did the work. But if they're going to do all the work, they're going to keep all the control.
Got your point.
I don't like the joints because like any relationship, if you're stuck together, it doesn't make you happy if it breaks down. But in a perfect world, if you can hold the lease, you hold some negotiation power with the franchisor. But they're not going to agree to that. You create the opportunity, and then you go to them and say, give me, like, I want your unit here. I found a great location. I have the lease. Well, a lawyer can be very helpful in that lease. A lawyer can be very helpful to understand that lease because it's important to understand it.
Yeah. بيتر انت اشرت نقطة مهمة قوي، لما الواحد بيروح on the weekend to check which store to go and dine in with his family، بيبص على الريفيوز ويقول لا هنروح الستور ده، بلاش الستور ده، ده واخد يعني ريتس اعلى او اقل، ده في كذا وده في كذا. فانت اثرت نقطة مهمة قوي، انت لما بتروح تختار اول حاجة بتختار سيكتور معين هتشتغل في let's say كار ديتيلينج، عايز تعمل غسيل عربيات، عايز تعمل whatever store is في اي بزنس، food industry whatever the business is، بتختار النوع الحاجه اللي انت هتشتغل فيها، وبتدور جواها هتلاقي كل الاندبندنت وتتفرج عليهم وتشوف الفرانشايز بزنسز وتقارن، وجوه الفرانشيزيز دول بقى الفرانشيزورز دول بقى تقدر تختار مين فيهم اللي هيديك بنفيتس اعلى. اللوير بيديك انديكيشنز ان هو بيشوف حصل اي ترانزاكشنز في كليمز اتعملت على البيزنس ده، بيديك الصوره الكامله من خلال تصور البيزنس ده. ايه كمان ممكن تقدر تقدم غير السيرشنج على الحاجات دي تقدم للفرانشيزيز؟
هو part of the process ان انت when you're speaking to a broker, you're speaking مع accountant, you're speaking with the lawyer, part of it is يعني we're there to help, right? يعني you're there to evaluate the expectations. لو انت داخل وبتقول لي I'm gonna buy this franchise and I'm gonna never go work there. It's going to make me so much money. And the person has unrealistic expectations. Yani, it doesn't work. Yani, part of the process is to have this conversation to ask, what are your expectations? What are you looking for out of this? Because I think in the side, people think it's automatic success, but it isn't. Um, I also think you have to do your own homework. You have to drive around المنطقة اللي انت بتبص عليها. You have to go see the restaurants in the area. You have to see, what is my competition doing? Like, for example, if you're looking to buy a medical office, um, let's say like a clinic, these are common in the States, and they'll probably come to Canada eventually. You call the medical clinics in the area and say, when can I see a doctor next? لو في مواعيد نفس اليوم, يبقى the area isn't full. It doesn't need another clinic. You know, يعني, I guess what I'm trying to say, Magdi, is you have to do your own work. You have to do the homework. You have to, but from a legal perspective, إيه بقى like أهم حاجة for me in these agreements, الroyalty, what am I paying? وhow much flexibility فيها إن الفرانشايزور يغير الأماونتس. الراديوس, الrestricted radius. لما أنت بتاخد franchise units بيدوك منطقة exclusivity, فما يقدروش يفتحوا another franchise بنفس الاسم in X kilometers, 3 kilometers, 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers. دول حاجتين, for me, I would try very hard to negotiate my franchisor to say that these can't change. عشان لو انت دخلت and the royalty, let's say, is 6 or 7%, where it decreases over time or increases over time, يعني it's hard to run the business. أو لو انت فتحت في منطقة and you thought you had 5-kilometer radius, while all of a sudden you go يفتحوا another 3 beside you. Very tough to manage, يعني it's going to be very tough. But those are the things, يعني الحاجات to me that are most important to focus on. In hospitality, for example, apps, the franchisors are creating their own apps, pricing على DoorDash or Uber or whatever. How do you strike a balance with الحاجات ديت? So they're all considerations, but to me, the royalty and the radius become the most important things that you really need to be comfortable about.
Exit plan. أنا دايما بقول I give advice to my clients. Exit plan is more important than all the arrangement for entering the business. So it's one of the most important points to be considered by business owners, by franchisees, and also the franchisors. They need to make sure that the business is safe for them. So what would you tell them if things went south, for example, and there is issues and they have to leave the business? In some terms, it's very critical that it seems that you are leaving the business and all the efforts that you did is gone. Is this true?
So it depends. Yani, there's 3 scenarios. There is, you're leaving when things are going really well and you're going to make good return on your investment. There's times where things are going so and you're just going to leave as you enter. But then the crisis. So let's talk about the crisis situations and let's see why people get into that crisis. Okay. The crisis happens for very specific reasons. The first is people run out of cash. Yani, you spend all your money on the system. If the franchisor says, please confirm you have reserves of X percentage of the investment, and you say, yeah, I do, and you give him a fake letter, but then you go in and the business doesn't go as fast as you're hoping, and you run out of steam, well, what happens? The franchisor has to come in and take it over. But very rarely do people who plan properly reach that crisis. But usually the entry is wrong. يا إما expectation is wrong, يا إما the resources aren't right for the situation. Um, for another example is some people are very good at customer service, others aren't. Now, if you go into a customer service industry and that's not your nature, very complicated. Yani it's not gonna the franchise system isn't gonna correct your personality. It's not gonna change it. But I always come back and say an honest franchise will tell you this is what the last unit sold for. This is what the people made. That they because if it's successful, they're motivated to share it. Well, what keeps franchises in the franchise system? Eventually, after you sign a term, until you sign, let's say 5 years, 10 years, whatever the number is, at your renewal, you get to make a decision to stay in or leave. Homa, they need you to stay in because without you in the system, you're not making money. They're not making money. So they're motivated to keep the system going for as long as possible. Where they're motivated, Mishinta Bessa to run one, to be a multi-unit owner. Yani Homa, they love to see their unit holders expand and grow to multi-units. You're not going to buy more units unless you believe it's been working in the first ones.
Mm. Mm.
So I don't think the exit, Yani, I think someone once said to me this: you actually make money the day you buy the asset. You determine whether you're going to succeed or fail based on the price that you paid to get it. Because if you're buying something today because you think there's so much potential and you're paying for the potential, you'll never catch up. But if you're buying something based on current, وفيها positives the potential, well, you didn't pay for the potential, you're going to be protected.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. The exit is crucial.
Yeah. Peter, آخر حاجة would like to share with our viewers في اليوم السادس هي اللي أنا واضح بالنسبة للقراية بتاعتي في الفرانشايز بزنس it's not one size fits all. ما ينفعش زي ما أنت حتى أشرت إنه ممكن واحد يكون طبيعته مش very customer oriented، ما ينفعش يبقى عنده customer service بليفل معين مش هيتغير. في زي ما انت قلت برضو الانتربرينوريال سكيلز بتاعت الناس بتختلف. في واحد بيبقى الاوبجيكتيف بتاعه buy myself a job, I need to buy a job and I never practice this business. اول مره اشتغل في الفود اندستري، فانا بالنسبه لي it's good ان انا اعمل فرانشايز. في others they already cookers, they are يعني طباخين ماهرين زي ما بيقولوا، where they don't need to have a franchise to make their own recipes. They have their own recipes. انا اديت الاكزامبل ده عشان اوضح الفرق، انه في ناس بيبقوا هم they are independent و they can create their own business that way، فمش محتاجين فرانشايز. وفي منهم بينفع كمان رغم ان هم برضو بالمانر دي والبنتاليتي والسكيلز دي، برضو لما بيخشوا فرانشايز بزنس بياخدوه to different levels. مفيش one size fits all حتى لو الكاريزما بتاعته مختلفه. توافقني في الكلام ده؟ وايه النصيحه اللي بتقولها للكلاينتس بتوعك لما بيتكلموا معاك في حاجه زي كده، ورساله توجهها لضيوفنا في اليوم السادس؟
Sure. You're 100% right. There isn't one size fits all. Because my friend bought it and it worked doesn't mean it's going to work for me. Any first step is understand what are my strengths and weaknesses. وبعدين understand what are my expectations. يعني أنا داخل الموضوع ده expecting I'm gonna work, I'm just gonna supervise. No. A franchise operator, yani I say in any business, the business owner is the president, the CEO, the janitor, the technical support, everything, right? All problems land on your desk, but you have to be ready for that. Okay. But I'll also say this, Magdi, in the franchising has been a great success. Yani, I have been involved in situations where people have run companies and they got them, let's say, to a certain level, and then it reaches a point where they join a franchise and it doubled. Aslinta, when you're one on your own, when you're just one person on your own, very hard. Like, let's take the food industry. I log into Uber Eats and I type whatever cuisine I want. The easy ones that come up are the ones that are familiar names. It's much harder for the other names to stand out in that universe. But imagine someone wants a certain cuisine with ءFranchise. Well, the franchises are going to all kind of pick part of the market عشان geography. And that's why we said earlier, موضوع geography, exclusivity, radius اللي protecting you becomes very important. The wider radius بتاعك, the better. So that's generally been my experience. أنا نصيحتي is very important. Ask your lawyer when you sit with them, what is the purpose of this process? عشان I have heard many stories where people have gone to lawyers where they leave with very significant bills in the franchise space. واللي بيحصل is they look back and say, but what did they do to protect me? A lawyer's role is there to answer questions وinform. عشان you have to accept it. Once someone, I'll give you a very practical example. A friend of mine called me and he said, I want to send you a document. Can you look at it? It's 200 pages. I looked at it. I called him back in 5 minutes. And he's like, how did you read the whole thing? I said, you see this section where it says the franchisor can change anything? The first 199 pages are kind of suggested because they can be changed. But make sure ان انت داخل not thinking المحامي is going to fully protect you. هو المحامي's role is to inform you educate you في البروسيس. مش هيغير and make the franchise system perfect for you.
Peter Saad, thank you so much for the informative information that we had today. And
Thank you.
I believe the viewers are excited to see you more on اليوم السادس.
My pleasure.
Different
Thank
topics.
you for having me, and
Yeah,
I hope this was helpful for people.
for sure. It is very helpful, and we appreciate your time today. I
Thank
know
you.
that you're very busy, and you are still very busy, but thank you so much for your time today.
It's my absolute pleasure, and I'm here to help. So thank you for having me, Magdi.
Thank you. Please accept if we have any questions على اليوم السادس ممكن نبعتها لك ويبقى عندنا حلقات تانية إن شاء الله.
إن شاء الله. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much Peter سعد محامي المعروف. أعزائي مشاهدي اليوم السادس, thank you so much. النهارده استفدنا كتير حلقة عن الفرانشايز وإيه الديفرنس بين الفرانشيزيز والفرانشيزورز والتشالنجز اللي بتواجه الاثنين أثناء اختيار البيزنس والمكان. وكانت حلقة جميلة جدا استمتعنا بيها مع بيتر سعد. أعزائي مشاهدي اليوم السادس, أتمنى لكم كل التوفيق وتصبحوا على خير.